BBC Radio Berkshire.
With Bridgitte, Tetteh.
Well, the next general election happens this year. In fact, on the 7th of May, we'll be heading to the polls. And as you might expect, there's huge focus on politics and our politicians. Well, this week, we learned that just 8% of candidates describe themselves as being from black, Asian or minority ethnic groups. That's despite the fact that actually that the people from these backgrounds make up about 15% of the population. Well, tonight, we're asking, does it matter that in our area we have just 3 ethnic minority candidates? Well, I spoke to Simon Woolley, who's the director of Operation Black Vote, and asked him whether he thinks these figures are something we should be worried about or actually pretty fair.
What you'll find is that many of those candidates are fighting in unwinnable seats. And so when you strip that away, the number that will probably come through new candidates will be pretty low.
Can you explain to me what you mean by unwinnable seats?
Yes, I mean, there are seats in which the parties feel that they can win, and there are many other seats that they almost know that they won't win because the majority of the sitting MP is so great that the chances of winning are very, very unlikely. And that means that a lot of people, in effect, are wasting their time and their money, although there is the point of experience. What we're trying to do here is really transform democracy by having a sufficient intake of new black and minority ethnic MPs. And that seems to have halted somewhat from the significant success of 2010 when the Conservatives selected and elected 10 new black and minority ethnic candidates, many of whom were of African descent.
It could be said that placing a candidate somewhere where they're, very unlikely to win is almost kind of tokenism by the parties.
Well, a lot of individuals feel that it is tokenism. That they say, look how many candidates we've got. And as I said, it belies a real story. Look, we've been saying for a long time that there's a big disjunct between the political class and communities, particularly African, Asian and Caribbean communities. And to close that, we've got to have a greater representative democracy, both at the local and national level, but also policies that reflect the concerns of our communities, tackling, for example, the disproportionate levels of high unemployment, the stop and search, the access to high-end jobs. All of these areas are something that an unrepresentative democracy that fails to effectively deal with.
We're reading these figures as that, they're terrible. If you think about 8% of candidates describing themselves from these backgrounds, and it's actually more, when we talk about how the population make up, it's more like 15%. But some people would say, actually, when you think about political engagement, that's not bad. If people are so disengaged with politics, that's a great figure, isn't it?
Well, there is some truth in that. I mean, but, it's almost a chicken and an egg. So people don't engage because they don't see themselves reflected in person or in ideas and concerns. And what we'll be trying to say to your listeners and people around across the country, really, look, we've got to reclaim democracy and the issues that we want addressing. That until we stand up and until we force the issue, we're always going to be subject to receiving the crumbs around the political table, be that representation or issues. It's going to be an election. It's going to be an election, Bridgitte, I would argue, that could be won and lost by the black vote. But we've got to play a role.
Why does it matter that we have somebody who looks like us there? Surely the policies is what is most important.
Well, for me, Bridgitte, it's both. You have to have the symbol that this belongs to me too, that I can achieve high office as well. So that's one aspect. But the other aspect, of course, you're right. It's about policies. It's about those pieces of legislation that will help close those racial inequality gaps. The point is, of course, is that when you have truly a diverse set of politicians, not just in colour but in background too, the two are combined often, that you have then a representative voices around those policy tables that say, look, hang on a second, what about dealing with this, that and the other? You combine the two, you get good politics, you get good engagement, and everybody benefits.
Before you go, give me the top, in the last 30 seconds, the top 2 issues you think are of concern for the black community as we head to the elections.
Well, it has to be employment, because, everything stems from employment, the way that you're able to protect your family, to feed your family. And the other, of course, is immigration. The often toxic immigration debate is leading to a far more divided society, them and us, blaming us for the ills of society. The 2 ingredients could be catastrophic if we don't get it right. If we do get it right, then we build a dynamic society which recognises the talent on our doorstep.
It's the voice of Simon Woolley, who's director of Operation Black Vote. I spoke to him a little earlier. We're talking about this week. We learned that just 8% of candidates describe themselves as being from black or Asian minority ethnic groups. That's as we head to the elections in May. In fact, in our area, just 3 candidates come from ethnic minorities. And joining me on the line now is William de Costa, a councillor in Windsor, born in Goa. And I wonder, Wisdom, what do you make of the things that we've been hearing from Simon? He says the figures are particularly alarming. Do you agree?
I think from my perspective, just looking at it from a local authority level, there are, if you like, discrepancies. And when we look at sort of RBWM, Royal Borough, Windsor, Maidenhead and Slough and some of the other councils, actually perhaps Asians are disproportionately represented at the council level. But I would completely agree that Afro-Caribbean and also Caucasian whites are also underrepresented. So I think maybe this is looking at it at a local level. It actually strikes at this apathy, indifference, not understanding how the system works and how you can really make a difference to people around you.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, is it that the people from these communities are not interested in going into politics, or is it that it's a lack of opportunity?
I think it's a more fundamental than that, and people have a misunderstanding about how democracy works. There is an assumption that you vote and that's the end of it. Well, actually, democracy doesn't end at the ballot box. It starts with your vote. The way the system works is that if you don't get involved, self-interested people, and often party politicians, will get involved and stay in control. So they will be completely unrepresentative of the needs of ordinary people.
Wisdom, I wonder, for you, you're born in Goa, what kind of drew you into politics in our area?
For me, it was really always wanting to help people. Ever since I was a child, always wanting to help people, add value through business, through my community. So that's how I started. I was very fortunate in Windsor. There is an independent group of residents who gave me the opportunity to help. And as an outcome of circumstance, I've ended up as a councillor.
So for you, it was quite an easy route in. You didn't find that there were any obstacles?
For me, no, not in this area. So I have to say the way the system works, again, I point to that at a local level, there were lots of barriers to entry for individuals. If you're not a member of a political party, then how do you get involved? How do you make a difference to your local community? I think the council could do more by creating more open structures which then dilute the effect of party politics. I actually think there's no place for party politics in local government.
Just very finally, I was asking Simon, what do you think are the 2 key issues for those from BME backgrounds in our area? And for you, what would you say that was?
Wow, you put me on the spot there. Mm-hmm. I think representation. People need to feel that they're a part of something bigger and that what they say is important. So I think that sort of that representation is important, and I see perhaps that politicians really need to get back in touch with local people. I hate to use the expression politicians, but really perhaps we ought to be saying representation. Our local representatives ought to get back in touch with local people.
Knocking on doors.
It's a combination of factors. I mean, as a councillor, the number of hours I actually put in is quite enormous. People would be quite surprised. So knocking on doors is part of it. I've also I blog now, I write on websites, and through people like Radio Berkshire, I have the opportunity to also try and connect with people that way. So it's complicated, isn't it? Facebook also might be an interesting way forward, but I think the role for the politician and the ability or the mechanisms to connect become increasingly more difficult for them.
Wisdom, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. That's Wisdom de Costa, Councillor in Windsor, as we talk about representation ahead of the elections in May. He was talking there from a local perspective, but all very, very interesting indeed. We will, of course, continue to return to those topics that really are of concern to you in the run-up to the election. But if you do have a suggestion for a future show, don't forget the way to do it is to email me. It's Bridgitte.Tetteh@bbc.co.uk. And if you're wondering, how do I spell your fancy name, B, it's all up there on the website. Nice and easy. bbc.co.uk/Berkshire.